Okay, hi guys, welcome back to another episode, another YouTube video. I'm very excited to be back, and today we are going to talk about IMAX and the Odyssey, and I have a lot of interesting thoughts on the way that Christopher Nolan shot this movie and the way about how there's just not many IMAX cinemas in the world and why, I feel like it's kind of classist for Christopher Nolan to be filming on such a premium format. Not many people in the world can, go and actually view. On Tuesday, I went and watched this movie at the IMAX cinema in Auckland, which is on Queen Street in the center of town, and my showing was, so sold out. I got tickets on Sunday night, so 3 nights before, and there was only the front 2 rows available. Everything else was sold out. And I don't remember the last time I saw this much demand for an IMAX movie, honestly. There probably has been, but I don't go to IMAX very often, and usually when I do, it's busy, but it's not sold out busy. So it was quite crazy seeing it. Anyways, the movie was fucking awesome. I've really liked this movie. Truly, the movie was so epic. I was seated in the second to front row, so I was looking up kind of the whole time, which was so trippy. But I loved it. It did not, because a lot of my things with 3 hour movies is that they're quite, long, obviously, but it didn't actually feel like a 3 hour movie. I was actually pleasantly surprised how, much I enjoyed the pacing of the movie and that I don't think it felt too long, even though it was very fucking long. It's 2 hours and 52 minutes of the movie. Um, and it was a beautiful movie. The cinematography was so stunning. The monsters they did mostly practically, and it was hella impressive. I've seen some behind the scenes footage and shots of the practical monster designs and them filming with them, and it's so impressive. It's just so impressive. And obviously the acting, bro, the acting was phenomenal. My personal standout favorite performance was Anne Hathaway. I thought she embodied Penelope. I'm saying that I have you ever seen an adaptation of the Odyssey or have you ever read the Odyssey? But I thought she played that character so well, and she put her full heart into that, and that performance was powerful. Obviously, everyone was amazing though, but my standout role from that movie was Anne Hathaway. And I'm very curious to see how that movie does at the Oscars, because Christopher Nolan is quite an Oscars darling. The Oscars love him. I mean, obviously he's a great director, but the Oscars really like his movies. So I'm very curious to see how it does. Anyways, so moving on from that, this movie was shot entirely in 70mm IMAX using the IMAX cameras, which is literally the first movie in history to do so. Entirely is the first movie. Christopher Nolan is the first director in history to film a movie entirely with IMAX 70mm. And the fact of the matter is that in this country, you can't even watch it in that format, which is quite rude. The closest, true IMAX cinema in, literally the closest true IMAX cinema to this country is Melbourne. I'm not joking. The closest one is Melbourne. So if you want to go to Melbourne to watch true 70mm IMAX, you can. But basically, in this country, IMAX with laser is what we have, and is the next best thing to 70mm IMAX, which basically means that it digitally adds the extra screen size of an actual IMAX, of an actual screen size of actual 70mm IMAX. So it digitally adds it with, with lasers, and is the closest thing you can get to without seeing it actually in its original format. Um, I mean, it's cool that I live here though, because I am lucky that the Queen Street Cinema in Auckland is the biggest screen and is the biggest cinema screen in New Zealand. So I'm grateful that I do get to go to that and see it. Um, and yeah, I saw some Twitter comparison photos the other week, or have been seeing them since the movie came out, of basically the screen comparison from seeing it in a regular cinema screen like literally just regular like widescreen cinema, like typical, versus IMAX screen size, and how much of the screen that you lose, I would say that it is probably a third of the movie ratio wise that you miss out on if you see this not in IMAX. Which is quite diabolical because it's slightly angering because there is not that many IMAX cinemas in the country, let alone in the world. Literally, I don't think. I'm not even sure there's an IMAX with laser in Christchurch. I think the only two I know of is there's one in Wellington, one in Auckland. There's probably one in the South Island, but I've not actually heard of it before. So basically because of that, a lot of people are missing out on seeing this in its full potential. And um like I don't think that's great. I found a statistic on this website that said, meanwhile, there are 1,800 IMAX branded screens worldwide, which means that fewer than 2.5% of theaters carrying the IMAX name can actually show this film in its intended format. The other 77, whoa, the other 7, pause, the other 97.5% will show a digital conversion, smaller frame, lower resolution, different aspect ratio, still called IMAX. I mean, I will say that quote is not completely accurate because of IMAX with laser, which is basically the same thing, just digitally altered rather than on like film reels, like actual 70mm IMAXs. And yeah, as I said, IMAX with laser is what we have in Auckland, which is the next best thing. So I am grateful that we have that here. But I do want to say I've got a couple of like box office stats basically about this movie before I get into like a bit more depth about IMAX specifically. This movie opened with $245 million worldwide, which is Christopher Nolan's biggest opening weekend of all, like, in history. And that half of, like, the United States' box office was in premium formats, which includes 23% of that revenue was simply IMAX, which is quite crazy. I think it is not, like, I don't know if you guys understand that that is a very crazy statistic because IMAX is expensive and there are not many IMAX cinemas, as I've just said. So, like, having a lot of that, having 23% of the entire country's revenue be IMAX is a very impressive statistic. That means that people are traveling to go see this in IMAX. And I mean traveling because there are literally only 25 true IMAX cinemas in the US, and only about 45 in the entire world capable of showing IMAX 70mm, which is what he shot this movie on. There are like such sold out screenings to the point of like resale tickets, like resale black, like with for the Eras tour. Like this is on the level of like Taylor Swift the Eras tour, with like there is resale tickets going for like over $1,000 on like eBay and StubHub and a bunch of the ticket resale websites in the US. And when tickets were released for this movie first, they literally sold out in an hour. Like completely, IMAX viewings in the US sold out in an hour. Like, I don't know if you guys realize how actually impressive that is as a statistic. Very, very good. I am actually going to talk a little bit about the history of IMAX because I think in order to talk about this movie, in order to talk about the Odyssey and why I think not having enough IMAX cinemas in the world is detrimental, and like why I think it's classist that we have so few, it is important to understand where IMAX comes from and like the history of it as a product, I suppose. So, fun fact that I learned is that IMAX means image maximum, which, you know, thinking about it makes so much sense, and I don't know why I'd never, like, thought about why it was called IMAX, but there you go. Basically, four men started this multi-screen corporation. Their names were Graham Ferguson, Robert Kerr, Roman Krotler, and William C. Shaw. And they started the multi-screen corporation, which was later changed to the IMAX Corporation. They first presented their stuff, like, they first presented basically IMAX at the 1976 World Expo, where they were scouted by the planners for the next year's World Expo in Tokyo, who like invited them to do this IMAX display at their expo the year after that. And another fun fact that I learned is that it was actually created as a documentary medium, and early IMAX screens were actually mostly used in art galleries and museums for like educational media that was shot in it. Like a lot of the first IMAX movies were like documentaries and stuff that were played in these educational like facilities, which I find really interesting considering like where IMAX is now, and that it is literally purely just like an entertainment movie watching format. They even used it in NASA. I found a really interesting quote that says, "A striking example of this institutional influence is seen with the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., whose IMAX cinema has not only sponsored the production of many films about aviation, thereby encouraging advances in IMAX and aerial IMAX cinematography, but also facilitated collaboration between IMAX and NASA towards the design of IMAX cameras for use in space, the training of astronauts in cinematography, and the documenting of the space shuttle program." And that is mind-boggling to me that they used it in NASA, and like they use IMAX in space, basically. The first permanent IMAX screen was opened in 1971 in Toronto, Canada. The IMAX dimensions were very different and unique to like what was a typical theater, like to what like a typical theater looked like, basically. Obviously it's unusually like the screen is unusually high and wide, and it's not even flat like most cinema screens. It's like quite convex. I think that's the right way. Concave. It's concaved. That's what I mean. It goes in. Yeah, it goes in. You get it. And the seats are very high up and very, like, the rows are very, like, they're raked quite steeply up the thing to the top of the cinema. The largest ever IMAX screen was built in Sydney and was sadly demolished in 2016. I didn't actually find out why they demolished it, but this article here says that that screen was literally the biggest movie screen in history, which is crazy that it was in Sydney, which is pretty cool. So yeah, as I said earlier, Christopher Nolan is the first person to ever direct a movie entirely on IMAX. And this is because, like, most IMAX movies usually use a mix of mediums that are not just 70mm IMAX. Like, a lot of movies that are showed in IMAX are made not just with IMAX cameras, but with like a range of different formats and like screen sizes and ratios and stuff. This is due to the fact that IMAX cameras are apparently really fucking annoying to work with, as A, they're very, very loud, and B, and very bulky. They can only ever capture a couple minutes of footage at a time before you have to stop and fiddle with them and do shit. Okay, and the next category of this video is, I have the quote here, "But why don't they just make more IMAX cinemas around the world? And what next?" And IMAX projectors haven't actually been made for over 50 years. The original design files somehow just don't fucking exist anymore. And very few engineers on this planet actually know how to build them. Which is crazy, because I just reckon they should just train more people to make them. Especially because it is so good, and there is nothing like seeing a movie. Like, IMAX is such a unique experience. It is crazy that we're having to fight to get more of this when they know it makes so much money. I found a good quote from a Variety article talking about IMAX in relation to the Odyssey. And it says that basically, IMAX knew it needed to expand its fleet of 70mm film projectors ahead of the Odyssey. For over a year, IMAX embarked on a massive effort to track down broken, abandoned, and often forgotten projectors, salvaging parts to refurbish and install additional projectors. The strenuous process also required training 60 new projectionists from scratch. So they did know that this movie in particular would require a lot of, more demand for IMAX, and clearly they did get that. I've got some more quotes. I found some more quotes. Another one from that same article says that IMAX said it rebuilt as many film projectors as possible in-house, but some obsolete parts made it virtually impossible to find manufacturers because the components are complex to produce and the market is too small. The effort ultimately resulted in 41 IMAX 70mm locations worldwide for the Odyssey, up from 30 for Oppenheimer, a net increase of 11 after one projector was lost during the process. So this is like clearly showing that they are seeing that there is more of a demand for IMAX now, and they are building it up, but I truly don't think it's fast enough for my liking, technically. And then I got this other quote from the Variety premiere. No, not the Variety premiere. From the Variety article at the Odyssey premiere somewhere in the US, I think. And Variety was interviewing the IMAX CEO. And basically he said, "We're sold out in some theaters into the 5th week already. There's certainly more demand. The problem is they haven't made new IMAX film projectors in about 50 years. So we retrofit them, rebuild them, and part of our strategy is to see how far we can take it. But certainly demand-driven, I'd like to see more." You know, I low-key think that's a stupid statement, to be honest, because clearly it can be done if they try hard enough, and I don't think they're trying hard enough, because clearly the demand is there. And IMAX can obviously pay other movies, so, yeah. I personally think that's stupid. Anyways, but also, another point to this is that it also costs a lot of money to build the theater required for IMAX, even if they could make more projectors. It's very, because obviously I said that the dimensions are really weird. A lot of just cinemas don't have that money to be building IMAX cinemas out of nowhere because they're very weird sizes and they require a lot of room. And obviously because of the IMAX projectors, the very finicky parts required to fix the old projectors and retrofit them are very, very rare, which I think is another reason why they're struggling quite a lot to increase the amount of projectors and projectionists that they have to work with the IMAX 70mm. But, I feel like I'm saying this, dogging on IMAX a lot, but I have to say, it's not all bad though. It is an insanely unique movie viewing experience. And in the age of streaming and watching movies at home, this is hugely important in getting people into movie theaters. And because of the unique experience and how immersive seeing a movie in IMAX is, it's why people are willing to pay more. IMAX is, not the cheapest format to see a movie in. And in fact, it is the most expensive format to see a movie in. But it is worth it. As someone who's seen, I think, 4 movies in IMAX now. I saw Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, Avatar: Fire and Ash, Weapons, and The Odyssey. Which is generating a lot of income for the movie industry, which is, technically still struggling. I will say it is doing a lot better. I just saw a stat the other week that said the domestic box office, talking about the United States, could pass $10 billion in movie revenue for the first time since 2019, and that is a huge figure because 2019 is sort of hailed at this point as the biggest year in cinema history. Basically, Avengers Endgame is basically kind of the standard of why that year was so crazy, and apparently just that was the biggest modern box office stat that we've had in quite a while, and especially as that was the final year before COVID, things took quite a turn after 2019, and the industry has been struggling since to keep up, but it looks like for the first time it's doing good, and I'm so happy that the film industry is doing good, and that Hollywood is doing good, and it's about time, because I love movies. Support your movies. Support your local theaters. Support any theater. Just go to the movies. It's so fun. Go spend some money at the movies, guys. Support cinema is kind of the thesis of this thing. So yeah, I think that's kind of it. That's kind of all the research I have for today. So I don't know what the TLDR of this, I don't know what the conclusion of this is. When I was researching this, I don't think I had a conclusion. This was just kind of more of a think piece of here is what is going on, but I'm not actually sure what we can do. I think we need to make IMAX more accessible to the average person, as in I think we need more locations around the world where you can see IMAX, because having to go to a different country or a different state to see a movie, is quite diabolical. So IMAX, you need to be training more projectionists and retrofitting some more projectors, because I need a 70mm IMAX cinema in New Zealand, specifically in Auckland, please. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening, watching, whatever. I am glad to be back on this wagon of YouTube. And I love you guys. Stay safe, stay kind, stay happy, healthy, whatever. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Have fun. Bye-bye.